less than half joking. We have not played together before as this quartet. We have not met before. That's a great way to meet. But that's the jam session. That's the way I like to run a jam session environment. Even if there were more horn players, and we're going to talk about that. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Come on up a little bit. Come on close. You don't smell. He doesn't smell. Yeah, well, not much. Just if I know. Actually, Matt and I have had a conversation about this before. And I've talked with my combo class about this. I personally have a very low boredom threshold in music. And I think you all should strive to have that also. So you want to keep the music interesting, even if it's just, and I'd say just, and I don't think of it that way, but if you're going to a jam session and there's 12 horn players lined up to play, and this poor rhythm section that's got to play, always a fast tempo, why 95% of the time is it every horn player in a row playing way too long, followed by piano, bass, and then finally the drummer. And by the time you get to the drummer, half the horn players are having a conversation over on the side, just waiting for their turn again so they can play fours with the drums. Have you experienced that? Yeah. Exactly. So you need, starting today, to take the initiative to change that up. Now you saw when we played in this quartet format, I never took a complete chorus, right? That was a song called Alone Together. I never took a complete chorus. I kind of sometimes nodded to them. I turned, we just tried to really listen to each other and open up and play off of each other. And whatever happens, happens. There's a certain, especially when you're starting out or you haven't played a lot of gigs, sometimes there's a certain selfishness that comes into play, which is very anti-music. You want to go in to a setting and try to really open yourselves up to the possibilities of making music together. So you have to be, open to all the other players, very tolerant of the other players, no matter what level you think you're on or not. There's always something to learn from other musicians. When I was in my 20s, that was back in the 1800s, I took some lessons from the great Sonny Stitt. And one of the things he said was, if you're playing with other musicians, you learn from the bad and you learn from the good. From the bad, believe it or not, you learn what not to do. But that's a learning experience in itself. If you're playing with a rhythm section and you can hook up with one person on the bandstand and not the other two, you lock into them. I see my friend Hammer in the back there, Jeff Hamilton.
I'm not
Security? But he and I have been in this situation before, right?
Yes.
Where, not to name names, but later. But we've played on the bandstand and we just kind of, dig in and lock into each other. We've done that, and you're in these settings where you've got to find that. You've got to focus. But if you're playing with other horn players, and there's a lot of horn players. Again, why? Why does the horn player have to go first? If you're already up there on the bandstand, you're going to get your chance to play. How about giving the bass player the first solo, the piano player the first solo, the drummer the first solo? Instead of playing, 15 choruses, make a statement, If the guy before you, or lady before you plays 15 choruses, how about playing 2 great choruses and make it count? And that's going to make more of an impact than anything. We used to work with the great Sweets Edison. I don't know if you know that name. One of the all-time great trumpet players. A man who started in the 1930s with Count Basie and played through the end of his life, late 80s, early 90s, passed away at Sweets, could play as contemporary as anybody, and he was the master of economy. You know, some guy would get up there and play everything he knew, and Sweets would just stand up, wait, take a couple breaths, and play a short, concise, rhythmically great, powerful chorus or two, and just blow the place apart with his solo, because he took the polar opposite of what the person before him did. So there's so many different approaches to playing, and you know, it's playing in a jam session in public is also different than playing, you know, privately at your house. You know, anytime you're in a jam session setting, anytime you're playing music, you're working things out. You're working on your craft. But I think it's a good discipline and a good practice when you're playing in a public setting to try to hone everything too and focus it and make some music, make an arc to your solos, to the whole form. And you could do almost kind of instant arranging on the bandstand by you know, playing figures underneath other people, mixing it up like we just did with the quartet. You know, different combinations, different people solo, different orders. Give somebody a piece of the melody. One thing I noticed with inexperienced players too is they never know what to do. Now if you're playing a line, if you're playing a head of the song, fine, you can play it in unison. But if you're playing a melody, it doesn't sound good if everybody's trying to play that melody in unison. What you want to do is try to like weave around them or lay out, or play just enough to support them, and take your turns and leave some space, and then you'll come in with a piece of the melody. Do we have another horn player here that wants to get up? Yeah, come on up. David, would you kind of... So the other thing, which I just did, is, I see this all the time, is you show up, not even 5 minutes before, you show up seconds before the downbeat, and then everybody's up on the bandstand going, what do you want to play now, what do you want to play now? You know, you can put a little thought into it, and get there a little early, and come up with some tunes, and you don't want to embarrass people on the bandstand either. You can find some common material. If it's a smaller group, and it's you know, we a lot of times we're at festivals and things where they have kind of semi-organized jam session settings, which goes all the way back to Norman Grantson's Jazz with the Philharmonic, and actually way before that. John Hammond did some concerts with these organized jam sessions where they pick players, and then you've got to make some music. It's not a band, it's not a regular band. So the best moments, you know, somebody will come up with a different song, or you'll come up with an idea, and make it happen. So it's not the same thing over and over and over again. And even, you know, if you break it up into smaller groups, I'll bring some simple lead sheets. If it seems like the rhythm section is receptive enough to read something different, so we're not always playing the same songs over and over and over again, meaning the real book songs that everybody plays. You know, you dig a little deeper into the core, and you know, try to come up with some different things. If you're going to play a ballad, but always talk to the rhythm section first. Again, we see this in professional settings as much as non-professional settings, where usually my compatriots, the horn players, turn around on the bandstand, call a song, and you can see that the rhythm section doesn't know it, and then they're like, oh, you know, what do you want to play? You know, how many times have you been there? Yeah. So, what's that? somehow the adrenaline kicks in, and usually you half succeed. So we're going to play In a Sentimental Mood, and do you do that in concerts? D minor? Yeah, okay. So you play the melody, all right? And I'm going to show you like what I would do in this kind of a jam session setting and play kind of around you. Your name again? I met you at the saxophone first. Christian. Round of applause for Christian.
Yeah.
So you're going to set the tempo. You really thinking beforehand, kind of looked at each other, listened to each other, and it just kind of organically happened. I played the bridge, and then he laid out for the bridge, so I played a little more. I filled in the space a little, and then I gave it over to him. I decided not to come back and play underneath him until the very end. And we might have even taken a solo like that collectively if the spirit moved us. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah,
yeah. So the other thing, this is related to the whole jam session thing. You guys should always be working on tunes, songs, lines. It's a never-ending process. I'm always, I try really hard. My thing, personally, is I like to play songs, and there's so many. I like to explore, because I don't consider myself a composer of songs or pieces as much. And I'd rather interpret other people's material and find a way into that and try to make it my own. So I spend an entire year, let's say if I do an album a year, I spend an entire year sifting through material that interests me and try to figure out a way, as I say, into that and give it my own voice. And it's an endless process. And then I'll start playing those things on the bandstand. And I like to do, personally, again, I like to do a combination sometimes of kind of organic arrangements that just kind of flow, and then some written things too. And then sometimes you get into the recording studio and the chemistry is such that you throw everything out the window anyway. You know, when you're actually playing together, you decide, well, that was good in theory, but not in execution. So you need to learn to stay open. And getting back to the great Sonny Stitt, who had a lifetime of playing with local rhythm sections in a jam session setting, playing with other horn players. He always said, you know, it's like a series of doors. You know, if there's a couple people you can hook up with, you open up those doors. If it's not, you close them off and just provide everything for yourself. So that means every setting you go into, you can feel like you've played the best you've played, no matter what else is happening around you. And if you feel compatible with other people, you start giving them stuff. Even if you don't, sometimes you prod them a little musically. You try to get them, wake them up, or see what's going on over there. You know, the worst thing you could possibly do is lose interest right away, and you've played your solo and you stop paying attention to the music around you. I never, ever, ever stop listening to everybody I'm working with. Whatever your instrument is, you need to listen to all the other instruments in the band like that's what you're playing. If I listen to a record as a form of practice, I'm not just listening to the saxophone player, the clarinet player, I'm listening to the way the drummers play, the way the bass player and drummer are hooking up or not. Or why does this work? Why doesn't this work? And sometimes you get settings where strange things will happen, like let's say a bass player plays slightly behind the beat, the drummer plays slightly on top of the beat, and somehow it works because neither of them moves, and it just, you know, it stays that way. And then you play with people where it's completely locked in. There's all kinds of settings. And sometimes you play with horn players that don't want to cooperate. You know, they're just there and going through the motions.
This is why I play a lot of concert bands and orchestras, and I like the whole second violin and that kind of makes the music broad.
Yeah.
Most of the lead horn players, though, I find, were never second trumpets or third, and they actually kind of find it a little insulting to ask them. Or that's the body language that I get. I don't mean that. How do you encourage them to play the orchestra parts?
You mean because the
The harmony, you know, like where you underneath tones, and like you were doing a counter melody.
Yeah.
Really nice. That was really pretty. And I'm not to pick on Christian. He didn't feed that back to you.
Well, he did though, I felt, sometimes, and he's going to get there. He's
Yeah,
gonna
it's
I
a
know.
hard thing to do. Right?
But, you know.
How do you encourage, you know, people who
Well,
are usually lead players to
right.
play support roles?
Well, you're not always going to get that, first of all.
Well, I play at a community level, there's egos.
No, but there's egos on every level. And sometimes there's a certain kind of lead player sometimes that, well, they may not be jazz players anyway, but there's a certain kind of lead player that it's more about, it's like a calisthenics thing. It's about the power of the ego.
Yeah.
The only thing you can do is treat them as an equal. You say, you know, you indicate to them that you have to have confidence yourself. And I always have said this to students and everybody. If you don't have confidence, you fake it long enough until you eventually have it. Honestly, that's what you have to do.
Us sports referee, we take our tough calls all the time.
Yeah, because, you know, you don't want to be seen as anybody's inferior, even if you feel that way, you know? When you get up on that, in any kind of a musical setting, you want to establish that you're all on equal footing. And you want people to feel that way too, because somebody's got to make the decision sometimes. If there's not a sense of focus, somebody's got to lock in and say, this is what's going to happen now. When a lot of times when we play together, it's different because we play together enough and we just trust each other's instincts. We can open up and whatever happens, happens, But if you're in unfamiliar territory, you have to come on with confidence. You have to have people trust you. You have to trust them. And sometimes it's just not going to happen. And if it doesn't, I mean, if I was in a leadership position, I wouldn't be using those people anymore. If you've got to get through the gig, then you just try not to let yourself get influenced by them and just lock in and, or if it's like an orchestra setting or something like that, you just have to say something to them. If they take offense, they don't need to come back, but.
I've been burned a lot of people.
Well, sometimes you do have to do that, and there's ways of doing it too. If you've given somebody enough chances, and then they don't come through, then they're not going to be mystified if all of a sudden you let them go, yes.
I just have a question related to the communication that takes place, because I didn't see you do a lot of talking before you initially started,
Yeah.
but there was an awful lot of communication happening when you were playing that is, you're all pros, so you have this level of communication that less advanced players aren't going to have, so there's got to be some sort of conversation that happens in that setting.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can always do what we call a roadmap, and say, we're going to start the song, you take the first solo, then you'll play, but I think it's good sometimes as a form of practice to try not to do that, and it's a form of practice to learn how to open up to other players, and get that's a discipline in itself, and trust your instincts. And if you hear somebody going in a certain direction, you let them go, or you take the ride with them. You know what I'm saying? But that does take practice too, because sometimes you step on toes, or you mentioned that we had no communication before. I just said let's play alone together, and we're off. But we were all kind of trusting our instincts, and Eric, I never played with him before. Same thing, he just kind of went along for the ride and knew instinctively what was going to happen. But you do have sometimes, you butt heads a little bit. The trick also, it's that confidence thing. You don't let it phase you, and you don't stop playing and just look flustered. You're playing really. If you're finishing a phrase, you finish the phrase and then let the next person take over. So, but it's a form of discipline, and that's another thing. Like even in a loose jam session, you can always be working on that. It's not just about getting up there and using it to exercise over the changes.
Ken, you're so respectful on the bandstand. I wonder if you could address to horn players about respecting rhythm sections. And a lot of times I feel like horn players play with music -1,
Yep.
and they get on the jam session with the bandstand, and that's their music -1. So the drummer, bass player, piano player, guitar player are somebody that they can play over and not really let in or listen to what they're doing. And the second part of it is, you're so great at when you're finished playing, like Terrell Stafford, Matt and I have talked about this, we love it when you guys come over and stand right by the hi-hat and feel what we're doing to keep the involvement in the music and the concentration and the support of what we're doing, because we're playing every note for every solo. So you kind of touched on that with the jazz and the harmonica. But, what is your thought process in getting the hell out of the way of the rhythm section when you're not playing, or the other horn players? One of the pet peeves is a guy checking his reed in the light,
Oh my God.
standing right over the bass drum
Yes.
and looking at his reed while I'm playing a solo.
Yeah, or even testing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Or texting on their phone.
Yeah, or talking.
We're talking, yeah.
Yeah, that drives me nuts. Okay, very good point. You know, Buddy Rich used to make his band members watch him during his drum solos, and people used to laugh at that and think, oh, he's being so mean and wrong. First of all, it shows respect, and again, he made them do it, but eventually you learn that that's what it's about. You focus over there. If you look at the person playing, you're actually focusing your own brain on what's going on. You're locking into that, and you're showing the audience too. Here's what's happening. You know, the old stereotypical joke about, the bass player starts playing and everybody starts talking in the audience. That happens a lot. And partly that's the fault of all the players up front. You can't see the bass player because they're not respectful enough to move aside when he's soloing. And they're not looking at him playing. They're very clearly not listening to his solo. I don't think of Jeff Hamilton or Matt Wilson as timekeepers or percussionists. They're playing lines, they're playing melodies, they're playing arcs, they're playing great phrases that everybody can learn from and draw from when you're playing a solo. And incidentally, if there's any other drummers here and bass players, that's what you should think, not being just a timekeeper. That drives me nuts. As these guys know, I don't like that. I personally don't want the music minus one approach. If that's what you want, you might as well just play to a recording. You're playing with humans and making music off of them, with them. You're hopefully inspiring them. They're hopefully inspiring you. So I finish a solo if it's a quartet, and everybody else is going to play. I'll move to the side, and I'll stand over here, and I'm not going to talk to my fellow horn players. I'm going to watch what's happening and listen to them. I like standing right in front of the drums anyway, because I love to feel that strong sense of time and rhythm, and I always feel so sympathetic to drummers, and I love to try to lock in with them, and make music that way. And if other horn players start talking to you on the bandstand, I just try really hard to ignore them. I'll just sit there talking and I'm just going like this, just watching those guys until they just go away. But that's
right on.
But that's so rude and so unmusical.
Yep.
And so unhip. And everybody's guilty of it, and I'm trying to think when I learned that lesson. But I think I just always did it, because I had, when we came up, we were so fortunate to meet a lot of the great older musicians, and they would come and do workshops and things, and most of the great players had that thing. They were really respectful of each other. You could sense that, I was talking to somebody the other day about Louis Bellson. Oh, because I did a music workshop in Hays, Kansas, where, to be honest, and they would say so themselves, the level was not so good. I just did it right before here, because it wasn't a jazz workshop. It was classical music. But you go in there, and you never know. You're going to find a spark in somebody, and maybe you're the guy that brought out that little spark. And I saw, and there were some kids that definitely had that, and they're, they've got such budgetary problems over there. They don't even have the money for music in schools, and I'm trying to help the kids, so you should get together with your friends and try to play some music and tell the teacher you want to take solos. And so when we finished, I must have gotten 50 Facebook messages and emails going, you're the nicest clinician we've ever had. You're so positive, etc. Well, I learned that from when I was a kid. Louis Bellson, the great drummer, came to our school, our high school, and then he came again in college. Louis, as we all know, was the nicest guy on the face of the earth. So positive, so supportive, and he's, going from school to school, playing with kids that can't play, and he helped us all by suggesting things very kindly and playing his butt off, with us. and being so nice. And then later on, I got to play with him in professional settings and know him, and he was always the same way. And point being, you pass that stuff along. That's what you should bring to the bandstand, that openness, that positive thing. Even if things turn sour, and you're playing with 5 horn players that are completely insensitive and don't know what to do, or you're playing with a rhythm section that's insensitive, which happens too. You know, the reverse of what you said happens too, when rhythm sections just are back there doing nothing related to what you're doing. And you got to get through the night. So you try your best to make some music, and maybe you can, as I said before, nudge them a little and get them out of that. I played with, I told you the story yesterday. I'm not going to name the drummer. I'll tell you later. But the great bass player, Major Holly. I was playing with him, piano player, and a drummer who sometimes would kind of just like lose complete focus and attention, and the tempos would drag. There's nothing going on. And I'm in the middle of the song, and I hear Major Holly yelling at this guy. And he goes, hey, he says, wake up, you. Wake up. He says, you got 22 hours of the day to sleep. For these 2 hours, you can stay awake. And you know,
It's true.
that's true. How hard is it to focus your attention for 2 sets of music out of a 24-hour day? That's our lives. That's what we come to play. So even if it's what a lot of people would consider a throwaway jam session, I come to try to make music. And that's what it's about, you know? So, and you know, you're learning your craft, you're learning from other people, you're learning what to do, what not to do, and that's the whole thing. So I've been emphasizing this with my combo, and I don't want to get in the way of whatever anybody else is doing, but I would encourage you, anytime you're playing with a quartet or more, get out of that habit of always horn player, piano player, bass player, drummer. Mix it up. I'm going to get bored if I'm listening to that. And I'm certainly not going to do that on the bandstand for every song. It just gets tiresome. You know, so many times, I go to professional jazz concerts, and I'll be honest with you, I listen and I think to myself, I'm bored. No wonder why the audiences think this music is boring. You know, it's not that you have to get up there, and we have an expression where we say a musician goes for the house. You know, you're doing everything. You're playing high notes. You're, you know, trying to get applause. It's not about that. You're just trying to make music in every setting. So you don't have to play everything you know in a solo. You can play a very sparse solo, contrasting with what somebody else has played. You can do a duet with somebody. You know. So let me ask you guys a question. What do you find is the most difficult thing, you know, trying to play with other people or play in any kind of a public or semi-public setting? Personality?
Personalities, a little bit, yeah, trying to work through those personalities, if there's any kind of tension or some of the things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
It seems like once you're playing and you're communicating that way, it seems like you're getting past that a little bit.
Yeah, but not always. But you know, I think if you're in a setting where musicians are kind of put together or thrown together, even it's like online dating. You know, it is. It's musical online dating. But unless you're a real jerk, you're gonna get through the night. So you're gonna be kind of polite, musically, and receptive, and you know, try to make it work somehow, and then you can make a decision not to work with them again. You know, if that's the way you feel. You know, and we'll do that all the time. You know, like again, I've gone up to promoters after a thing's over, or if they call me, you know, for the next time, and I'll say, you know, I'd rather play with so and so, you know, than that person, you know, because it just didn't work.
Yeah, you're talking, and I'm really being informed, but it seems you're talking mostly about musicians, and I don't think you are, actually. How do singers figure in all of this? Is it the same as everybody else?
Well, yes and no. Singers, I've worked with some really great singers, so I'm on their side. I gotta say, it's tough for singers.
I know.
Are you a vocalist?
I am.
Yeah. I have to say, a lot of instrumentalists do have an attitude going in to singers, like, you've got to prove yourself even more than other people.
You better know what key you sing in.
Well, and I'll tell you the reason. And this, please, if you're a vocalist, don't take offense to this, but the simple fact is, because everybody has vocal cords and a voice, there's a lot of people that consider themselves singers that aren't good singers because everybody thinks they can do it. So there's many singers that don't really learn their craft properly. Like, they don't learn. The worst example is scat singing without knowing really the changes or having a good sense of time. There's very few historically great scat singers. Ella Fitzgerald, obviously. Dizzy was one. John Hendricks. Mel Torme could do it, who I worked with. Great lines, made a lot of sense. But, so instrumentalists, I'm glad you brought this up. So instrumentalists tend to sometimes resent the vocalists that come on, don't really know their craft, as you said, don't know what key they're singing in, they kind of get up there, well, I don't really know what the key is it, And then I've worked with singers, I'm sure we all have, where if it goes wrong for them, they start glaring at the rhythm section and blaming them. And so, unfortunately, because of all the bad ones, it's a setup. So you kind of do have to do what I said and fake that extra confidence and come on and try to put that aside and not worry about that and just say, I'm gonna do what I do and do the best I can and just sing. That's a thing too. For anybody playing in a public setting, when you're first doing it, you have to kind of psych yourself into it. You have to talk to yourself. You have to say, all I can do on this night is play the best I can play. How do I do that? By relaxing. If I'm tense, if I'm uptight about performing, it's going to all go into the fingers, my thought processes, my reflexes. So the only thing you can do is breathe, try to relax around the instrument, and play the best you can play on that particular day. And then you don't care what other people think. Some people get what you do, some people don't. And that will continue no matter what level you're on. Some people like Charlie Parker, some people don't. Some people like Coltrane, some people don't. It never ends. You don't worry about that. If you're doing the best you can do, that's all you can do. But you come prepared, and it sounds like you're already aware of that, right?
I imagine how maddening it is for a vocalist to get up there and not know the key and not know how to instruct the band, not know form.
Yeah.
And if you go up there and you don't know that, geez, you're suspect from the get-go.
Yeah.
And that can be conveyed non-verbally to you.
My comment from drums is that I want everybody to be an equal in the bandstand. And so a lot of vocalists will micromanage when they don't need to. They don't trust the band to have enough knowledge to make them sound like $1 million. If you let us do what we do, then we can make you sound even better than maybe you think you can sound. And singers generally have a managing attitude when they come up, and because they have to have it in that certain key or that certain tempo. And that's offensive to everybody else on the bandstand, because does it mean you're not good enough to play it at a different tempo or in a different key, or because we do it. So we're just looking for everybody to be an equal on the bandstand and be treated equally. And I think most players I know have that attitude of, okay, until proven guilty, you're one of us and let's go.
Yeah.
Sing your song, tell us the key, and stomp it off.
That's right. And you will find, you know, if you've got the right kind of attitude and everything, you'll be accepted amongst all the instrumentalists. And, you know, we all have nothing but the most respect for all of our favorite singers that we work with. And it is there's a common thing that we used to say back in the sexist days, you know, like Rosemary Clooney, who was a great singer. We always just say she was one of the guys, meaning, you know, she's one of the band, she's one of us, you know. And there's a lot of vocalists like that we've worked with. But so I think it kind of comes from both ends. Sometimes I do feel like the band has to cut them a little slack, at least to begin with, and see where is this going to take us. But the vocalist also has to be well aware of all that stuff, and you know, go in. And as I said, if you're not a scat singer, you know, here's the other thing about that. To me, I've learned so many great songs from listening to Sinatra, Dinah Washington. You know, I don't have the ability to sing the words. And if I play a song and convey the same sense of emotion that a great vocalist can without words, I've really done something. So ironically, a lot of us are trying to recreate that feeling that a great singer does. And meanwhile, on the other side, the singers are trying to scat like horn players.
Yes.
You know, so if you only sang a song with a great sense of time and emotion and forward motion, we'd be just blown away. You know, that's enough of an accomplishment. I'm not saying you shouldn't do everything else, but don't feel like you have to all the time, you know? So, do you have any other questions? Yes.
The pet peeve is, you know, you get 7 horn players and everybody's playing the melody. That happens so often.
Exactly. Well, I mentioned that before, and we demonstrated that a little. You know, if it's not a bebop line or something like that, you break the melody up, always. Just let somebody play a part of it, and maybe one person plays a little bit underneath them, or not at all. Take turns, throw it around, you know. And don't feel like you're left out if you didn't get a piece of the melody. Just make your statement during your solo, you know. It's a whole ego thing, you know. As I said, you have to be confident, but at the same time, you have to, you know, relax the ego enough to let everybody else in to the picture. So if I see any jam sessions here, I'm going to get really mad if I see anything we talk about. But that applies, as I said, even to, forget about jam sessions, just quartets or trios, you know. It's that matter of respect, listening, reacting, and having enough confidence in your own playing that you can let other people shine too, and not feel like it's a threat or you're worried about them. All right? Thanks for letting me talk to you.